Hello everybody. In this video, we are going to be talking about the classical music period, in which the classical music period goes from 1750 until about 1820/1825. Quick review here. Polyphony. In the past, you've learned about polyphony. And polyphony, if you remember, means many voices or instruments. And all of these voices or instruments are equally as important. All right? And one of the forms that uses polyphony is the fugue. And if you want to check out that link there that is posted there, you're more than welcome to check out that link. I'll be playing you guys a piece that is an example of polyphony later on in this video, but this is an extra example that you can listen to if you would like. In classical music, homophony is the ruler. It is the big thing. All right. As I said before, polyphony was the big one before the classical music period and the Renaissance and the Baroque music periods. Now, homophony is when the music contains one main melody, and that particular melody is supported by accompaniment. And as I said, this is a big part of the classical music period. Now, the classical style, what they wanted to do is simplify and clarify. So that's why they made that movement from polyphony to homophony. All right, so in this, I'm going to go ahead and play you an example here. So here's polyphony for you. You can listen to this. You can hear the many voices. You can hear not necessarily. Actually, let's see here. There we go. I can show you. So, well, as I play this for you, you're going to see how each of the voices are very similar. Are very similar. They move as they come in. They move in the similar fashion. I know it's not necessarily, you're not necessarily hearing one melody. But let me play a little bit of a snippet of this for you so you can listen to it and you can see it in action. All right, so that gives you a quick example of polyphony and those voices, all being equally as important. There's also another link there for you if you want to go listen to more of it. All right, then we've got Happy Birthday. And is it homophony or polyphony? All right, so let's take a look at that really quick. And in this, you can also see the music and hear it. So you can easily hear that there's one melody, which is being played at the top here, and then below that is the harmonizing that is going on of that melody. So that gives you your homophony right there. So this is an example of homophony. All right, phrases and periods. So A phrase is a short musical section, and it's usually 4 measures long. But sometimes it can be longer or shorter, and it's typically combined to form a period. And a period is a pair of phrases combined to form a complete musical thought. So you can think of it like a phrase plus a phrase equals a period. With that in mind, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. All right. Together, these two phrases equal a music period. Here's your first musical phrase up top here. There's your second musical phrase, and that together equals a musical period. When you're doing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, how I wonder what you are. There's phrase 1. And then up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. That's phrase number 2. And then that, now as I said, that creates your music period. Another thing, phrases are kind of like a question and an answer. All right, the first phrase is your question, and the second phrase is your answer. So, going back to that Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, you heard the first phrase and then you heard that answer phrase afterwards. All right, but a question and an answer is called a period. So down here below, you can see another example of that. So you got your question phrase, and then you've got your answer phrase. Just really quick, as I said, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. This was an easier one for you to see it in action. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. And then there's your answer, up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. So that's your answer there. All right. Next here, I'm going to give you an example of what we call Alberti Bass. First, let me explain it for a second here. Basically, it takes a triad, which is a chord, which is down here on the musical staff, and it separates the notes. All right. So what I'm going to do, instead of a piano example, I'm going to give you a marimba example. So, without further ado, here is the marimba example. On that slide, we had a C major triad. So what that would sound like would be this. Okay, so with Alberti Bass, it's taking that C major triad and it's breaking it up just like we talked about, like this. All right, so it's just, that's all it's doing. It's just taking it up, taking it and breaking it up and giving you a different type of feel to the music. So that is your example of Alberti Bass. Okay, so that is your example of how Alberti Bass would sound. Lastly, let's talk about the symphony. Well, not lastly, but symphony, we're going to talk about some forms of music here. Symphony is the most distinct genre in classical music. It was invented by Haydn, and also he was a master of the string quartet. And it's split into 4 parts, or what we call movements. And notice what is bold on the slide. You have Haydn and you have movements. But anyway, those 4 movements, you have a first movement, which is usually fast and using sonata form. We have a second movement, which is slow, which is theme and variations. We have a third movement, which is a minuet or a scherzo, which is a dance. And then we have a fourth movement, which is fast and usually sonata form or rondo. And then what sonata form is, let's explain some of this here. Sonata form, you have exposition, And that establishes themes, and usually it gets repeated. Usually it's what we call home. And then development. It takes the themes and changes them all up, and it journeys away from home. And then we have a recapitulation, which comes back home, and it brings back the themes from the exposition, which we played before. And then it usually ends with a coda, notice in bold, which is just a final resolution to the piece. It ends the piece. This is kind of a little bit of a diagram, if we were to give you a diagram of it using other objects. Breaks it all up and so forth, and then we end it. A cadenza. A cadenza is an awesome solo that a performer plays, and usually it is in a concerto. And a soloist gets to show off their talents. They get to show off what they can do. And it demonstrates a high level of virtuosity. And at an obvious point, the soloist would signal the orchestra with a trill, and everyone would come back in and play together along with the soloist. All right, and lastly, a quick recap. Now, recap the characteristics of the classical style. You got a melody, homophony we were talking about. Now, classical music tends to use melodies that have distinct phrases and periods. All right, so that's here your question and your answer. Harmony is different here now. We have classical music tends to have one melody voice and simple accompaniment with chords and or Alberti bass. And this configuration of having one main voice makes it homophony. And then we have style. Classical music is typically absolute music and not program music. And then form. The most distinct form of the classical period is the symphony. So remember that, which is split into 4 movements using sonata form for the first. So that is your short overview of the classical music period. Make sure you join us for our live sessions on Mondays and Wednesdays at 1:30. Have a good one.